But what got people talking is what happened after the match was over. This is what people were most interested in. They even gave us a little White Rabbit tease at the very beginning of the show. So they wanted you to know there was going to be some kind of reveal or development in this White Rabbit story tonight, so stay tuned. And they held it off until the very end of the show. The arena went dark, and we got our big reveal. What we got was a very bizarre segment with all of the Firefly Funhouse characters come to life. They threw a spotlight on Huskus the Pig in one part of the crowd, Mercy the Buzzard in another, Ramblin' Rabbit, who looked like he's seen some shit, Abby the Witch, and finally the Fiend in the front row, who got a huge reaction when they showed him in the front row, but it was not Bray, it was a stand-in in the Fiend costume. And then we had a doorway that they set up on the stage. And I didn't realize this at first. Shout out to the people who picked up on it. I don't think this was a coincidence. There were actually 2 nods last night. Clearly nods from Bray to the late Brodie Lee. One of them was in the doorway when the door eventually swung open. There was like this blue, bluish white light shooting through. That's how Brodie Lee debuted in AEW, if you remember. He had that same light behind him. Might have been a doorway behind him, but he had that same light behind him. Also, apparently, Abby the Witch, under her veil, the mask that she was wearing, I guess, was an homage to the mask that Luke Harper wore when he was part of the Bludgeon Brothers. It might have been the exact same mask. Again, I didn't pick up on it right away, but clearly these things were not done by accident. And so I thought that was actually a pretty cool thing there. But we had a doorway set up on the stage, and we had the cutaway then to video of the old Firefly Funhouse, which now it looked all dilapidated, like the bank had foreclosed on it because Bray couldn't afford his mortgage payments after he got fired. They cut back to the doorway in the arena, the door swings open, out walks Bray Wyatt with his lantern wearing a mask, very much like the one in the movie Black Phone, which you should all watch. He pulls off the mask, he reveals himself, and he blows out the fake lantern to close out the show. The reaction to the Wyatt reveal was one of the loudest that I have ever seen. Not the loudest, but it's up there. It's up there with some of the biggest that I've ever heard. These people were dying to see this man. Even before the main event started, before the fight pit, when they rang the bell, Matt Riddle and Seth Rollins were serenaded by chants of "We want Wyatt" at the beginning of that match. People were getting restless. They wanted to make sure that they were going to get what they felt they were promised, even though WWE never promised them a damn thing. WWE never said a single word about Bray Wyatt or The Fiend. But the people were there for a very specific reason. They got Wyatt, and if you were hoping for a Bray Wyatt return, if you were one of those people, if you like Bray, if you're a fan of his, if you like The Fiend, if you were dying to see him come back, and that's what you were looking forward to, this was everything you could have hoped for. You got all the characters represented. You got the old Bray who showed up. You had The Fiend. You had all the puppets. Right? You got it all here in this segment. Everything you could have hoped for. All the usual weirdness that you would associate with that character, which now leaves us with more questions. Is he alone? Or is he back with friends? Will there be a new Wyatt family? Is the Firefly Funhouse back? Or is it done? I saw what they did last night, and my initial reaction is that maybe this was their way of writing those characters off, since they never got a proper send-off the last time. And now, Bray's going to move on to something different. But maybe not. Maybe this is all just the beginning of the Firefly Funhouse, like a rebirth for the Funhouse and the Fiend. We could be getting a Three Faces of Foley type situation with Bray. Look, there is a lot of merch money yet to be made on all the Firefly Funhouse stuff. It's why Alexa Bliss still carries around that fucking doll. Because they sell a lot of them. It's not even part of her character anymore. It's barely even referenced, but she still comes out with it. When you see the reactions all the characters got, look, why get rid of them? Right? If you could still make money off of it, if it's still a big deal to a lot of people, I guess why get rid of them? A lot of people pointed out that Mercy the Buzzard, even with the mask on, looked an awful lot like Grayson Waller from NXT. Between the shirt that he was wearing and the black gloves that we've seen Waller wearing, could each of the people under the puppet masks in the costumes last night be a wrestler that will join with Bray? Maybe Dexter Lumis is tied into this somehow. Bray once feuded with The Miz. Dexter's been taking out The Miz without any explanation whatsoever. You know, the Lumis character is very creepy. He would fit in with what Bray is doing. Everybody has their theories about what to do with Bray Wyatt. His handle on Twitter has been Wyatt6. Wyatt and the number 6. Is the Wyatt 6 a reference to a new faction? Or is it just a reference to all of the characters that we saw last night? I think in total, including Bray, I believe there were 6 of them. You know, we don't know who he plans to go after first. Is he going to be a heel? Is he going to be a babyface? I don't see how he could be anything but a babyface after the reaction that he got last night. They know people are going to be dying to see him when they buy a ticket to come to these shows, at least initially, right? There's going to be a honeymoon period. This guy's going to be nothing but a fan favorite. And as with everything, when we talk about Bray Wyatt, it comes down to one thing. It comes down to the booking. You look back on Bray's last run when he debuted the Fiend character, I was into it. I said, man, this is fucking cool. You know, now I like horror type stuff and creepy shit, and it reminded me of like some of these creepy pastas that I've seen. So I was into it, even though it's not everybody's thing, right? Yes, it's hocus pocus, it's magic, it's over the top stuff. It's like Undertaker from the 90s. But it was something very different and very unique, and I bought into it. And then over a period of time, and it did not take very long, in fact, he had one match, which was his debut match at SummerSlam against Finn Balor, and he beat Finn. And, right, we were off to the races and everything was looking good. And then they said, well, we got to put him in with the champion. And so literally within 2 months, maybe not even a full 2 months of him making his in-ring debut as The Fiend, they had already programmed him with Seth Rollins in a Hell in a Cell match challenging for the Universal Championship. And we all know how that went inside the Hell in a Cell. Rollins himself just told Ariel Helwani that match did not go the way that I wanted it to, and it did not go the way that Bray wanted it to. We did what we were told by the man upstairs, you know, me being the boss, the only boss that matters in WWE, the only man upstairs, Vince McMahon. He's upstairs, he's downstairs, he's everywhere. We did what he told us to do, but it's not what we would have done if we had the power to book that match the way that we wanted to. So who knows what Bray would have had in mind for that Cell match. I can't imagine it would be any worse than what they did. A few weeks later in Saudi Arabia, they put the championship on him. Did the Fiend character really need the championship? Did he need the Universal title? They booked themselves into a corner. They put the championship on this guy, and they did not know what to do with him. And it all led to Saudi Arabia again. Him and Goldberg, we all know how that went. The way that they did it. It's not even just that he lost, but the way that they beat him. It was just so... It's like such an inconsequential thing. Like he's just another guy for Goldberg at his age at that point to just steamroll through. Because the match they wanted at WrestleMania was Goldberg and Roman Reigns, right? Georgia against Georgia Tech. Who gives a fuck? Meanwhile, we never did get that match at WrestleMania. But once he lost the way he did to Goldberg in Saudi Arabia, that was it. It was the death of The Fiend. That was the final nail in the coffin. The Fiend went on to feud with other people. He was never the same after that. That character was never the same. So the question now is, what is going to be different? What, if anything, this time around is going to be different? Will he have more creative freedom? Triple H, I think, is going to be far more receptive to his ideas. Bray is full of ideas. Some of those may not always be good ideas. Others may be great. But I think we have barely scratched the surface with those ideas that we saw from him the last time. We only scratched the surface, I think, of what this guy is capable of doing when it comes to some of the more creative things that he can come up with. But I also think back to what Seth Rollins told Ariel in that same interview when he said that nobody who went into the ring with Bray Wyatt, with the Bray Wyatt character, and I think he was being more specific about The Fiend, nobody who got into the ring with Bray Wyatt came out of it any better off than they were when they went into it. If anything, they came out worse. And he cited himself as an example of that. The Beast Slayer character, the Beast Slayer babyface character that Seth Rollins was doing, was pretty over at that time. Until he met Bray Wyatt. And Bray Wyatt was the cool kid on the block. Everybody was, thought The Fiend was cool. And when they did what they did with him, I think Seth got a lot of the blowback for it, even though it really wasn't his fault. But he said in the interview, he was done. The Beast Slayer was dead. when that Hell in a Cell match, when that feud was over, he had to put that behind him and completely reinvent himself. He went heel. He tried to bury the Beast Slayer as far beneath the earth as he could because there was no way of salvaging it. But he said nobody who went into a feud with Bray Wyatt and that character came out of it any better than when they went into it. Is that going to be a problem again? It's very possible. We're going to find out if Vince McMahon really was the main culprit in a lot of the Bray stuff going to shit, or if the blame belongs squarely on Bray Wyatt. I said this when I was talking recently about Tony Khan and AEW benefiting from Vince McMahon's presence, right? And all of his boneheaded booking decisions. For so long, they benefited from it. Hey, at least we're not Vince McMahon. We're not them, right? Come work for us. Come watch us. Well, they don't have that boogeyman anymore to blame for everything. The same applies to Bray Wyatt. And anybody else, frankly, who comes back to WWE because things didn't go well for them the first time. They can't blame Vince McMahon. The fans can't blame Vince McMahon now from this point on if things don't work out. If this run ends up the same as the last one or the hocus pocus stuff gets really bad, we won't have Vince McMahon to blame for that. And then there's still the issue of his matches. Bray is not just an actor. He's a pro wrestler. Pro wrestlers have wrestling matches. He's got to be able to go in the ring. He doesn't have to do flips, but we know he can work. He's had good matches before. I think he just needs to be in there with the right opponent. He's had good matches before. I can't think of too many of them at the end of his last run. That has to change. The smoke and mirrors, it's only going to get him so far before people get tired of it. He's going to feud with people. Those feuds need to pay off in good matches. Bray's a master at telling stories. On promos, with QR codes apparently. But he can tell those stories in the ring as well. That is going to tell the tale about how successful this latest run is or is not going to be. They can still do cinematic matches with him, but they can't all be cinematic. That worked in the pandemic era when he did the Funhouse match with Cena, and he did the Swamp match with Strowman, and he did the Inferno match with Orton. But now they have people back in the buildings who are going to want to see him. He has to be able to deliver. Now he should have a level of freedom that he did not have before. He likes to, go around and sing he's got the whole world in his hands. We heard that last night, right? He's got the whole wide world in his hands. Right now he does. His fate is in his hands. Triple H is going to give him that chance. Vince McMahon got rid of him. Triple H has brought him back. Vince McMahon killed him. Triple H has breathed new life back into his lungs. Last night you saw why Triple H brought him back. There's lots of money to be made. Right now, there's lots of excitement. We're in the honeymoon period. Braun Strowman just came back not too long ago. He's over like crazy right now. He's over in a way that he hasn't been in 5 years. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. So we're in the middle of that period right now. You saw why Triple H brought him back. And there's lots of new faces for Bray to work with. I just hope they don't end up worse off for it like some of them did last time.